Hello everybody, it's Foo here, and today I want to do a video about a really unconventional Stonjourner set. Stonjourner is a really cool Pokemon with really interesting stats and move pool, especially Wonderoom. Wonderoom, as soon as I saw Stonjourner learn this move, I knew that I had to do something with it because it's got the perfect stats for Wonderoom. First off, a bit about Stonjourner. Stonjourner is a really interesting Pokemon, mono rock type, with probably the strangest stats in Generation 8. It's got massive HP stat, even higher attack stat, and even higher defense stat. So in terms of its physical bulk, it's insane, and it has really great damage output with that attack stat. Its special attack is base 20, and its special defense is also base 20, which are absolutely awful. To put it into perspective, it's the same special defense stat as Magikarp. So this thing, if it gets hit by a special hit, it will take a ton of damage. Despite having that massive HP stat, it will still really hurt to take any special attack. And its speed stat is middling, but it does get rock polish, which means that it can outspeed pretty much anything, which is fantastic. It's got a great physical move pool, loads of different coverage moves, weird things like Heat Crash, it's got Heavy Slam, it's got Rock Slide, it's got loads of fighting coverage, Body Press. It's a really cool Pokemon with loads of offensive options, which is cool. But the set that I want to talk about today is actually a defensive set. But first, a bit about Wonderoom. This is definitely an overlooked move that most people don't really know about. It was introduced in Generation 5 in Black and White, and it's like Trick Room in that it's a room move that will affect all Pokemon on the field. And what it does is it swaps your defense and your special defense stat. So you can use this offensively. For example, if the opponent has a really high physical defense stat and you want to hit them with a physical move, and their special defense is a lot lower, that means that if you use Wonderoom, your physical attack will be going up against their special defense, effectively doing much more damage. But I think Stonjourner uses Wonderoom very well defensively, because I've shown you its wonky stats. It's got that massive defense stat and very low special defense stat. If you outspeed the opponent and know what attack they're going to go for, you can use Wonderoom always to make sure that your really high defense stat is used to tank any move that comes at you. So this thing can turn Stonjourner into just one of the most insane bulky Pokemon with ridiculous bulk. It's got 100 HP, 135 defense, and with Wonderoom, effectively 135 special defense too. Its typing, which is mono rock, is actually pretty good too, because it's got no 4 times weaknesses. So even super effective moves with that bulk, you can basically take super effective moves quite easily. So let's look at the set that I came up with. So it's going to be a really bulky set. We'll look at the EVs first. I've got max HP, enough speed to outspeed Choice Scarf, Damanitan, and Dragapult when I've gone for a rock polish, and the rest is in my defense stat to have as high a defense stat as possible, and so that I can swap that with my special defense stat. In terms of the attacks, obviously Wonderoom's there, and I mentioned rock polish. This is really important for going before your opponent and making sure that Wonderoom is always up or reversed at the right time. So you have to be faster than your opponent for that to be as effective as possible. I've also got Protect on here because it allows you to scout for what moves the opponent's going for and then put up Wonderoom or reverse it as required. Also, it helps because you've got leftovers, so you can use Protect to get as much leftovers recovery as possible. And the last move on here is Rock Slide, which is just a great stab move. It does a lot of damage coming off that base attack stat. Even though we haven't got any EVs invested into attack, it will still do a lot of damage. Plus, with Rock Polish, you'll always outspeed the opponent, so you'll be able to get some flinches there. And if you Dynamax, this turns into Max Rockfall, which does a lot of damage, and also sets up Sandstorm, which boosts your special defense even further, which means that when Wonderoom's up, your special defense is just through the roof. You can take hits for days. But just beware, before you Dynamax, you won't be able to set up or reverse Wonderoom, so you need to be careful about that. So the idea behind this set is for another Pokemon to set up Toxic Spikes, and this allows Stonjourner to stall as much as possible. If you get Rock Slide flinches, it means that they're taking more poison damage. If you set up the Sandstorm when you Dynamax, it's just even more chip damage. Meanwhile, they won't be able to do much damage to you because you have that ridiculous bulk, whether it's on your defensive side when Wonderoom isn't up, or whether it's on your specially defensive side when Wonderoom is up. So I took it to Battle Tower to see if the theory worked in practice, and actually I was pleasantly surprised. Stonjourner just generally as a defensive Pokemon is very good, but I also had battles where I could set up the Wonderoom and it took the special moves really well. So some great examples were Against the Bomber Snow, I could protect to scout what moves it was going for. It was going for Giga Drain, so I could set up the Wonder Room, and then I could take the Giga Drains like they were nothing, despite having a base 20 special defense stat. So that was really, really cool. Another one was against a Togekiss that was doing tons of damage before Wonder Room was up, and like no damage at all when I had put the Wonder Room up. So that was really cool too. And the last one was against a Vaporeon that was just doing insane damage with Hydro Pump, even with Wonder Room up. But that Wonder Room definitely saved me. Otherwise, it would have been able to KO like 6 Stonjourners without Wonder Room. So it was really interesting to see that the theory did work in practice. Wonder Room can actually be used by Stonjourner to make it a defensive Pokemon, to allow you to stall out things, especially in the Battle Tower. But in Battle Tower, you do have a lot of control over the flow of battles. In game, it's a lot easier to kind of predict what the opponent might be doing, and so that was kind of one thing. And then I wanted to see if Wonder Room Stonjourner could actually be viable in competitive Pokemon, as in against other people. So I took it onto the 1v1 online ladder to see if I could beat any people with it. So I took it onto the singles online ladder to see if I could beat any people with it. And it's definitely a gimmick. The issue with this set is that it takes up like a whole Pokemon to set up Toxic Spikes, and then Stonjourner, which itself has very limited move pool because it has to run so many other things to allow Wonder Room to be effective. So I did actually manage to get it to work a couple of times where I could set up the Wonder Room and I was then able to take some super effective hits that I wouldn't have been able to take otherwise. For example, Surf of Lapras, which would usually do a ton of damage. I was able to Wonder Room and get some chip damage on the Lapras, which was really helpful because you never know if Lapras might have like a weakness policy, which means that even with Wonder Room up, like weakness policy would have been an issue and would be able to KO me through the Wonder Room. But it allowed me to get the chip damage I needed with toxic damage so that I could then take it out with a rock type move. So that was great. And then in another battle, the opponent had a Chandelure with Energy Ball that would usually absolutely destroy Stonjourner. But Stonjourner was able to take the hit because of Wonder Room, which was really, really cool. So it does kind of still work, but the issue is that if there are any problems with the strategy, you don't have enough Pokemon then left to be able to kind of come back from that because you've used 2 Pokemon to set up and then you've only got 1 Pokemon left. If it doesn't work, the opponent is in a much, much better position. So that was an issue I found. I also found that lower ladder was really difficult to navigate because people had just wacky sets where they'd throw on special and physical moves, and obviously Wonder Room doesn't prepare you for that because you'll always have 1 low defensive stat, so you can't really go up against those mixed attackers. And then people who just know what they're doing or they have a good way of kind of getting around that, like it is very hard to pull off. It's a gimmick. But the reason I wanted to do this was basically to test the theory of whether Wonder Room could be viable, and it kind of can be. Don't get me wrong, there are other Stonjourner sets out there that are way better. Rock Polish offensive Stonjourner would just be better in most circumstances. But this is a really interesting way to use Wonder Room if you're interested in using that. It's also allowed me to think about what the ideal Pokemon to use Wonder Room would look like. And that would definitely, in my opinion, that would definitely be a Pokemon with a similar stat spread to Stonjourner. Like, Stonjourner has a really good stat spread for Wonder Room. The issue is that it doesn't have some of the other move pool pieces that you actually need for it to be viable. So I think you need reliable recovery. Stonjourner has to rely on Protect with leftovers, which isn't great. You also probably need a way of setting up status yourself. So a Pokemon with Toxic would be ideal so that you don't have to have another Pokemon with Toxic Spikes, because that sacrifices a whole team member to have this Stonjourner set work. And finally, I think a Pokemon with the Prankster ability, so that you can always set up Wonder Room at the beginning of the turn without having to worry about speed stats. So like a Prankster Pokemon with Toxic, Wonder Room, and Recovery would be really, really interesting to see. I think that would work very well. But it was a really, really fun thing to try out with Stonjourner. I love these weird mechanics that just aren't really used, but definitely take the opponents off guard. So it was a very fun piece of theory put into practice. If you want to try it out yourself, you can get the Wonder Room TM from the person in the battle tower. After you've completed the game, she sells you that TM. And I've also put the team code up here. I mean, it's not a great team. Really, you just want to be using Weezing and Stonjourner to try out Wonder Room if you want. It's kind of tricky to use, but you can get it to work if you try. And then like follow up with any other Pokemon that can help with the Pokemon that Stonjourner will struggle with. Let me know if you think that Wonder Room could work any better, if you've got any ideas for sets about Wonder Room in the comments section below. But that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.